All right. Let's see here. I'll fuck this up eventually. All right. Absolutely not smooth. Perfect. How you doing, Sam? All right. So we should be, looks like we're streaming live. We're on the Facebook. That's how old I am. And YouTube.
You're almost 50, right?
Yeah. I'm almost 60.
Almost 60. Almost 60.
I'll be 70 next weekend.
It is round up every year.
Yeah, I round up by 20. So we're gonna be live on Facebook. We're gonna be live on YouTube. It should record as well. So this is the first one that I'm attempting to live stream on. So welcome.
Awesome.
All right. So for those that don't know, Sam, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and give your stats and a little bit about yourself. Go ahead.
Yo, I'm Samo. I'm currently 2-1. Well, I like to say 3-0 in Muay Thai kickboxing. I've done martial arts for probably about 8 years now. Seriously, I realized whenever I was a lot younger that this was something I wanted to pursue, a career I would like to pursue, and now we're just making it happen. John's been really helpful along the way. Past 2 years I've known you.
We're coming up 2 years this summer is 2 years.
Yeah, so 2 years. Helped me a lot during my journey so far, and especially since I started having sanctioned bouts. It's been a fun ride for sure. It's been an interesting years.
How old are you now? How old are you now? Did you say that?
I'm 20 years old.
20 years old. Yeah, you're young. You're young.
20 years young.
And you're fighting. You fight. Your base style is Muay Thai.
Muay Thai, yes, it is.
Muay Thai. Where are you fighting out of?
Fighting out of Ronin Kickboxing here in Sarasota, Florida.
Shout out Josh.
Yeah, shout out Josh Golden. Train out of Uppercuts Boxing and Fitness by Aaron Jaco. The Jaco brothers, Josh and Aaron have both helped me a lot, and brought me into their home and treated me like their own. So I'm really happy to be here and really happy to have such a great gym to train out of.
Yeah, I got to meet Josh. I like him a lot. I've gotten to meet in the last few years that I've gotten into training MMA fighters. I've met a lot of fight coaches and striking coaches and so forth. I like Josh. We got to sit down and have breakfast after one of your fights, and I think I nailed it, right? I think Josh agreed. He's almost like
the Shaolin monk. Yeah, the Shaolin monk.
And he almost has this Dave Grohl look and chillness about him, like energy vibe.
You're too old. I'm too young. I don't know who that is.
It's not even. It's funny because it's. I don't even follow Dave Grohl's music, but you'd probably know. You'd probably know. I know his band that he started with was Nirvana.
Nirvana. Okay, I know Nirvana.
Yeah, exactly. So Nirvana, the lead guitarist, I think, for Nirvana or drummer, I forgot what he did. I don't know that much, and it's from my era. But he was the main. And then when Kurt Cobain, after his suicide, I believe Dave Grohl reformed the band. I think that might be who Goo Goo Dolls are.
Goo Goo Dolls.
Goo Goo Dolls.
Goo Goo Dolls.
I forget, but I forget who Dave Grohl. I could be because that's not even my music genre.
Oh, I think it might be Chili Peppers. I'm getting
no. Oh God.
Foo Fighters. It's from the Foo Fighters.
Foo Fighters. That's who it
is. Yeah.
I have no idea. I have no idea who the fucking Goo Goo Dolls are. The Chili Peppers. The Chili Peppers I can get down with. That's some Flea was my first introduction when I was younger to bass guitar. Which was through sports. I had played football, and a dude I knew at high school football was an offensive lineman, big dude, 6 foot something, and he just jammed out on the bass. And that was the first time when I was probably 14 that I had heard I had sat around somebody playing an instrument like a guitar, and he was just and I was like, dude, that's a dope. I had no idea, I didn't really have I drums or shit like that.
First time it kind of piqued your interest.
Yeah, and then he turned me on to. I grew up on hip hop and rap. Like that was my shit. So the first time I listened to rock, any type of rock music, was or any type of guitar based music, so to speak, was freshman year of high school. He gave me Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and he gave me Metallica, Black. Okay. And I was like, oh, we played football, so he was like, I was like, oh, this is okay. All right, he was playing it before practice and stuff, and I was playing like I had Dre, Snoop, like that was all my stuff. Like I grew up on LL. It was just like a funny way. I just grew up on a lot of hip hop and rap, and it was just coming out. It wasn't even like popular. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you want to talk about going back, but not to get sidetracked. This episode, I really wanted to talk to you about MMA because I don't get to talk about that a lot, and there's a lot of core based people on the Instagram and Facebook that are into MMA. So I had a wild weekend with the Jake Paul Mike Perry fight, so I want to get to that.
Did you go to it?
No, hell no. I can't. I'm having trouble staying up past 10 o'clock now these days.
No, it was we had went up to Tampa, and me and my cousin, girlfriend, his girlfriend, we all went up there, and we didn't even realize that the fight was going on, and we had to pay $30 for parking.
That's right.
We're like, what the fuck is this? We go up there. We're just going up there to eat, and then all of a sudden we're paying $30 for parking because the fight's right down the road. I thought it was wild. I didn't even know it was happening. I'd seen some stuff on it, but nothing major. There was no major promotion really for it.
Well, there's enough, man. They did enough box numbers. I mean, listen, that's a whole nother thing because when I kind of got into full-time into coaching fighters and understanding the dynamic behind venues and selling tickets and putting events together in Jersey, Philadelphia, New York, then coming down and spending some time seeing it happen in Florida. I can tell you right now, man, like I was telling fighters back in the day, like Jake Paul has given you guys all a blueprint that has never been presented to any athlete in any sport at any given time in history before, which is in business what we call direct to consumer, like direct to fan. You can go direct to fan. The way I quote unquote found you was color commentating a fight and you were entertaining.
Yeah.
And when we got to talking, I got to know you better. It was calculated.
Yeah.
You understand at a young age the value of putting on a show, even at the amateur level.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think about that, when you have a guy like Jake Paul who already has millions of followers from his YouTube that are going to tune in anyway.
Well, millions of followers and dollars. He's
got
all the money.
I mean, he's like, if you look at it, he's been able to jump the line, which nowhere in football could you just like not play high school or college and then show up in an NFL team the year they're going to a Super Bowl and be like, hey, I want on a team. Let me practice. You know what I'm saying? Like, so fighting's unique in that way is also, but he's laid the blueprint that if you really understand social media and you put a lot of effort into it, which is still a very autodidactic, self-taught medium. You don't really like, they're just starting to put college programs together. And I don't think they're that good for, social media marketing, and you're of the generation, built from it. So it almost comes second nature. You could almost overlook it to the point that tell your story, stay focused, come up with, I don't want to say a character, but we all have these different personalities within us. I just cut an episode and I just released it with a really good coach, Jason, who talks about you have these different core personalities and you'll slide into them depending on what type of either A, trauma you're dealing with, or B, internal issue you're not ready to address, or a more simplistic one as a fighter when you start quote unquote getting into the mindset of fight camp.
Yeah, and I was just having that conversation with my girlfriend actually. It's like you're not being don't obviously force yourself to be someone who you're not whenever you're in a public space and you're talking to someone, but obviously you should kind of add some fluff sometimes whenever you're in a crowd that isn't maybe your typical crowd. You do something to like cater towards the likeness of those people and get yourself in that social group. It doesn't mean it's not you, but you're just, amplifying your personality in a way. And like you said, it all comes from, I feel like, well, would you say it stems from trauma and like past experiences as a child, and where you've got these different divisions as like a different layers of the onion per se.
Yeah. So understanding, without going too far down the rabbit hole, as you begin to compile life experiences, it's like information going into a computer system. But the computer system, i.e., your brain, is not just logical based numerical equations. It's mixtures of hormones, and it's mixtures of feelings, and it's mixtures of a soul, and it's mixtures of these embodiments and these ties to higher things. So those extra computations into experiencing something is why somebody can see something that's very traumatic and it breaks them down for a long time. And somebody else watches the same exact thing and become make that the pillar of which they build a successful life from, right? So, and understanding where you are on that spectrum allows you to, getting back to what you say, is navigate situations in life that are present. So you have, right? So like when you have people, where I sit on the outskirts of holistic coaching, which you've started to see, is that I do a lot of the mumbo jumbo shit and I practice it, but I explain it in very, very realistic terms because a lot of the coaches are like, well, yeah, you got to always be authentic or always be you. It's like, no. When you start getting into deeper levels of consciousness, what makes you think that the people you're around deserve the authentic you? And if you're trying to live a life of peace, you don't want everyone to have access to the authentic you.
Yeah.
Right. There needs to be some barrier there, because here's where a lot of the holistic mumbo jumbo fails to realize is like, and I call it, you got to plug back into the matrix, because we live in the real world. Like you still got to pay your bills, still got to show up. You can't just like, not everybody can turn around and start hugging trees and meditating in the world is going to work out well. Like we need people to do hard jobs. We need people to join the military and go to war. We need people to do certain things. But one of the best sayings of this comes, I believe it's Bruce Lee, is, you don't want to ask for an easy life, but the strength to endure a difficult one. And you'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yeah.
And, and then you can go through a lot of psychological things. You can go to a lot of biblical things, but you'll see a concurrent theme of this concept of, be dangerous, but be in control, like have the ability to exert control. So sometimes you need to be able to do that. So when you're like, hey, I'm putting on a face or an air, it's kind of, and we talked about this in my last podcast, is okay, well, what's the real reason behind why you're doing it, right? Like, so like, if you're going into a group of people and you're like, hey, I want to adapt to this, either A, large format because I want to win over fight fans, or B, small format, I'm at a company networking event.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fake people.
Trying to connect. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if I know who I am and I'm comfortable with who I am and I know my purposes for this hour or two, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mirror and project so that I can navigate like a ship through an ocean, pull out what I need from this event and protect the authentic me. Then you're coming from a place of peace and nobility. So then there's no wrongness of, well, that I'm putting on a fake mask.
Yeah.
But if you go into the event like, I'm not worthy, I'm really afraid of all these people, I don't want anyone to figure out that I'm stupid, or I don't want anyone to think that I'm not a good fighter, so I'm just going to like run my mouth and be loud. It can look the same from the outside, but from the inside, from where that, it was great because he was talking to me about the conceptualization of me of, sometimes I will do what I feel is noble, but it's almost knee jerk, versus me really understanding, where is it coming from me? Is it coming from a place of trauma where I always have to fight a bully? Or am I really looking at a wrong that no one else could right? Do I need to get involved or not? So,
and then I feel like that too, you're able to either, decipher that or, better understand that, depending on how healed you are, just because whenever you talk about that, like, it looks the same. I feel like you can see that, and it depends more so on like how in tune you are with yourself. Like whenever you're around other people if you are the most confident, most healed version of yourself, you are able to detect whenever there's someone around you who isn't necessarily sure in that confidence that they're portraying or that they're giving off. I feel like that's something that was just extremely present in this fight. It was like the dude looked cold whenever he was just standing there, like staring me in the face. But then every interaction outside of that, he was just extremely nervous. He was a mess. He was unsure. He was just completely unsure of himself. And I feel like that's something like with my personality, I use to detect in a way a lot almost is like, everyone has nerves. I get nervous. I was a little nervous going into this. I mean, 3 weeks, a month out going into the fight, I was definitely having a little bit of anxiety with all my family being there, being able to see me.
Well, hold on. Time out.
Yeah,
Back us up and rewind so that everybody can understand the story of how the anxiety built up. So you are in Florida fighting out of a where's Josh and Ronan out of? What, it's not Tampa.
We're in Siesta. We're in Siesta Key. Right,
Siesta Key, Florida.
Sarasota, Florida.
But you're 19 and you've been fighting the last how many years you've been fighting out of Florida?
Well, so I had my first sanctioned bout. That was the one you commentated. That was almost 3 years ago now.
Okay. And then you moved originally from
St. Louis, where I've done smokers and tournaments and different things like that. So I have experience in the martial arts realm. I've done that for a while.
Just so people understand, smokers are non-sanctioned.
Non-sanctioned.
Technically, in some ways, like in Jersey, it's illegal, and in some ways in violation of like a lot of like fight bodies. Well, so it's like I'm not throwing you under the bus. I get a weird mix, I get a really cool mix of people that are super into fighting and they would totally understand what the smokers are about. And they got other people being like, what the fuck is he talking about? So
it's called a smoker, for a reason, because you're looking to smoke each other, but it's in 16-ounce gloves. So most of the time you fight in 12 to 10-ounce gloves. For kickboxing.
It's usually you're going to spar 100% full speed with game level intentions.
Yeah.
So, and it's for other people in other sports, it's like the last preseason game before the real season starts.
Yeah.
Like you're going at it, but you'll probably sometimes they'll wear headgear and they'll wear like you said, the 16-ounce gloves. What do you normally fight in?
Normally fight in, it depends on the promotion, but 12 to 10-ounce gloves. Okay, so there's about a 4-ounce to 6-ounce difference in the glove.
So you've been down in Florida, you get your first sanctions fight in Florida. That's the one I color commentated on. Sure. That was a great time. And then now, so in the year or so that I've been with you, you're now returning to you. I'm sorry, you just returned to.
Yeah, just returned to St. Louis.
St. Louis, where you're from. Okay.
So it was my first time there in almost a year and a half.
Okay, so for a year and a half you've been gone. You're returning to St. Louis. Take us through that. So now so that's where all the anxiety is coming from. Your first real sanctioned fight.
And last time I was there, that's whenever my dad got arrested. So it was the last time I saw him was, the last time I was there. So there was a little bit of anxiety behind that. Just I hadn't been to town in a while, and the last time it didn't go so well. I'm going to get to see all my family I haven't seen in a while, get to see my friends I haven't seen in a while. And it just all, their expectation of me, let's say their expectations right here. And I know I'm going to perform right here. But it doesn't matter if I perform right here if I get knocked out. If I can perform right here, I get knocked out, then their expectation, it feels like that drops. And it feels like I didn't necessarily satisfy that. So that's where my worry was just I know how I can perform, but if I go in there and, it's a fight, anything can happen. It's a fight. You've seen fights where people get knocked out in the first 3 seconds. And, of course, it's like, obviously, do I believe that's going to happen? No, I don't think that's actually going to happen, but could it? And that's where that anxiety drives from, And I would say just the following weeks leading up to the fight, I kind of felt that, which I hadn't. I don't want to say I hadn't in the past fights, but it was less of a factor. Versus this time, I'm going to have all my family, friends, girlfriend, everyone there. And, it's going to be in front of the biggest crowd I fought under. It's the biggest promotion I fought under. Just all of these different factors going into it, making it a big moment. And, whenever I got to St. Louis, whenever we flew in, it almost kind of all disappeared. Like, I wasn't nervous about the fight itself. I was nervous about my family. And whenever we got there, it kind of all started to just go away. I finished weigh-ins, and at weigh-ins, I weighed in, and so I was walking to my room to get more food. And as I'm walking there, so Ameristar Casino, they've got the entrance, and they've got this like fountain and a whole bunch of restaurants, and it walks down, and there's the casino on the left-hand side, and then upstairs is the ballroom, and that's where all the fights were. So I was coming downstairs, right, and I'm walking through this little area to get back to my room in the hotel, and I see the guy that I'm fighting, and he sees me, and he looks away, and like instantly, as soon as he sees me, he's like trying to like not make eye contact. His head's turned to the complete opposite direction of where I'm at. So as soon as I get in reaching distance of him, I like put my hand on his shoulder, and I tell him, hey, thank you for taking the fight. I really appreciate it. And he like kind of jumps, and he's very clearly a lot of nervous energy. And that moment, I started to think about what again to feel, because once again, it wasn't like I was so nervous about the fight, but more so I didn't know what to expect out of this guy. I was told he was 0-0. I had found a fight of his that was 2 years ago. I found that he had done karate for all of his life. So almost 20 years he's been doing karate. And I was not told any of these things. I found them out myself. So I wasn't sure exactly what to expect with this kid. I had really no idea. But then based off that first interaction, just the nerves that I felt with him, I started to have these thoughts like, I'm going to crush this kid. I'm going to kill him. There's no chance. You know what I mean? But I had to hone those back because it's, who knows? This kid chose to be here. He's choosing to fight. No one's making him fight. No one has a gun to his head and is saying, you have to fight. Like, no, he's here because he wants to do this. Mm-hmm. So I started to analyze those emotions and, take from them. And we had ceremonial weigh-ins after that. And whenever we go to weigh in or whenever we go to face off, I love staring into people's eyes. Some people say, you stare through them, try to ignore the emotion. But I want to see, like, what are they feeling or what do I feel from what I see. And he was just, it was cold almost. Like there was nothing, no emotion. And I was thinking, ooh, this is interesting. Okay. We get back to my seat, or I get back to my seat, and my girlfriend tells me that she saw him just over shaking, smiling, breathing all heavy. And like, as soon as the face off ended, he was in the corner, just shaking, just scared. So I wasn't sure. I was having, multiple different thoughts on how this could go. He's either going to come out swinging, trying to kill me, or he's going to run away, and he's not going to be much of a fight. And I feel like that just goes back to, once again, what we were talking about beforehand of these different layers of a person. It's like he wants to fight, but where is this emotion coming from? And is he nervous because he's nervous to fight? Or is he nervous because he knows he's going to get in there and he's going to have a war? He knows that I'm going to come at him just the same way he's going to come at me. Or, he's questioning the same thing. So it was, just back and forth with my emotions on how I felt about that. But then we come to fight day, and Casey and I are in the elevator. We're going to go get some food, right? We're sitting there in the elevator, and the door's open. And guess who it is?
It's him, man.
It's him. And as soon as he sees me, he puts his head down and he's just extremely nervous, like very obviously, unsure of himself. And gets in, and I just kind of think about it for a second. Like, am I just going to sit in silence, or no, I'm going to break the silence. So I ask him, good morning, bro. How are you doing? Are you going to get some food, or did you bring food with you? He's, I'm going to get food. So just thinking of some like sort of common topic, right?
Yeah.
And dude starts choking on his words, just like, I had cream of wheat.
Did he have trouble? Did he have trouble making weight?
No, he was. He came in on the limit. He came in.
Yeah, he looked good. I saw him the weigh-in. He looked good. He didn't look.
That's the thing too, is he looked good, but he looked at walk around weight, if that makes sense. He didn't.
Yeah, he didn't look like he had a cut for that. And I will say this too: if you the video and stuff that's out there for you, well, one is you have. I know more of your background, so you have a very a more mature or elevated way of dealing with the things you've dealt with in your past, where you're comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
And fighters, in my experience, because I've been in the hotels with them, and I've heard them say, like, imagine if you had to run into the guy you had to fight. And I'm like, I'd fucking love that. Like, right. Like So, but that goes back to like personality, deeper rooted personalities and how your personality dealt with certain things. So that dictates how you deal with the future things. So it's like, there's a lot of different ways you could have went on that elevator. It could have been like, I'm not going to say anything and I'm going to revel in him feeling uncomfortable, or I'm going to say something to fuck with him, the typical mind fuck. Or you were just like, hey, like at the heart of it, you're a fighter. You enjoy the fight. That's that's what a lot of people, you reminded me, and I think I said this to you a while back, not a little bit your first fight in that just engagey mentality of like, I want to put on a good show and go out there and throw.
Yeah.
Like you're aware of your youth. We had talked about that, your technical loss. But, and you even said it to me, you're like, you're young enough where these are the time to make the mistakes, and your amateur record is the time to lose the fights. Right. And,
100%,
and you just go in there. And now we had talked about that with Josh. We're like, okay, well, we want you to go in there and have a little chaos, but a little controlled chaos. Yeah. And then that second fight in Valhalla, you were 180, not 180 degrees. I don't want to say you're in a different direction, but you were like now 2 to 3 levels elevated within one fight. You were listening to Josh real well. You were controlling your breathing. There were a lot of other things that were mentally going on for you before that fight, but your anxiety control of that was real good. We went through a lot of visualization. You went through, you were just, you were just toned in for that, or I'm sorry, dialed in for that. But you do things differently than that. A lot of other fighters would, like I look at that, that's poor coaching. When he gets off that scale and he's shaking, one, I always want you to be aware of the fact that don't put yourself too much in the head of the other person. I like that you can empathetically feel their emotional base, but don't start going down the false game of chess of like, well, is he doing this for this and this and this? Always be in here. Like you have so much control here, and you're well elevated for your age and your professional, like, only being a few fights into amateur. You're very aware of how to control this in here, and I want you to keep that. So always focus on like, hey, this is how the fight's going to go. I don't give a fuck whether he wants to come out throwing like a beast or whether he wants to come out slow. Here's how I dictate. Here's Josh's plan. Here's Jeremy's plan. Right? Boom, 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 boom. But he could have just fucking had his adrenaline dump right there because he didn't know how to control dealing with you, because he wants to just fucking explode and yell at you because he doesn't know how to. And then the elevator, same thing. He's like, why the fuck is this guy being nice to me? How the hell can he? And then he looks at your film and he's like, oh, he's super fucking comfortable. Like how comfortable this guy looks,
That's where I was expecting him to be more comfortable with all of the tournament karate experience he would have.
Have you ever done tournament karate?
No, but it still counts.
Nothing like a fight. Nothing like a fight, bro.
Yes.
It's not like what you see. I've done tournament karate. I did it in my youth. It's very sterilized, very 1 point boom done. This idea of going at it where you could get hit a few different times is a different speed.
But you still understand where my thought process is if he's got 20 years experience in this, it's not.
Your thought process is in the wrong fucking process. You're trying to get in his head. You should just feel what you just needed to do was like, he's not comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to read any further than that. I don't need to know whether he wants to do this because he wants to avenge a fallen fucking friend. I don't care if he wants to do this because he was an ex-heroin addict. Like, I don't care what his deal is. He's not comfortable right now. I am. And that's all you need to go. You start going through your game plan, because if he's uncomfortable, he's going to make a mistake. If you're comfortable, like you said, you don't make them.
But that's just what was tricking me up, is these little short interactions I had with him, made me feel multiple different ways. And I talked to my girlfriend about it, saying, like, he's either going to run away from me or he's like a wild animal that you lock in a cage. And whenever you lock that animal in the cage, it doesn't matter. They're going to fight to the death. They're going to try to get out of that cage.
Yeah, you have a plan for either one. You have a plan for the other one,
Exactly.
and everything in between. Get in your head.
I just was so unsure about which one that was because of how he interacted with me. And then not only that, but like shortly before, in amateurs, I mean, you've been there. In amateurs, anyone that knows how amateurs work, backstage before we both walk out, we're both standing right next to each other. We're both. I'm staring at him right before he's about to walk out. He's walking out before me. I'm right behind him, watching how he is acting, how he is breathing, how his coaches are acting, how his coaches are.
Yeah, you're a little more visual. Yeah, you're a little more visual at the amateur level. I will say this: I don't care how small or big the promotion is. I've been at pro and amateurs in Florida and pro and amateurs in Jersey. They're fun.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun.
But it's small backstage, so you get
all of it to me. I think it's just new to me. At 40 plus years old, I've been in NFL locker rooms. I've been in NBA locker rooms. I've been in. I'm trying to think, even baseball stadium locker. Like I've been in so many. I've never been other than a spectator. I don't think I've ever even been to like a big UFC fight.
Yeah.
So even though I'm a fan of it, I've never really I didn't grow up with it. I was growing up going to football games, right? So the first time go ahead.
If you think about it, they're usually in a football stadium or a basketball arena, and like they're in all these different things. Where if you think the locker rooms are on different sides of the building.
Oh yeah, this is all different. You locker room right across
our locker rooms
way
next to each other.
Yeah, Vigilant was a nightmare. Vigilant was a nightmare. Valhalla was really difficult. I give a lot of credit, despite whatever issues. It's difficult to run those smaller promotions because it's hard to fight in them. Like fucking warming up, right? In Valhalla, we had that fucking it was like a broom closet. Remember that? And I had to keep putting the fans in it and so forth. I mean, they ran a much better show. That one I went to. I know you had different experiences, but then the other because they're also run out of in Florida, they're run out of more of these convention centers.
Yeah,
in hotel convention centers. In Jersey, I got to do behind the scenes for the bigger ones like CFFC, Dead Serious, and they all were in Atlantic City.
Yeah,
so that was pretty dope. Like even if it was like the warm-up rooms were seemed more like warm-up rooms for bands and entertainers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we had like the one room I got to do one championship fight that I was behind the scenes, and it was all little cubicles you can see where it was made for people to make makeup on. And we're just throwing down gym mats so they could roll around and warm up, Yeah. And we're in like the hallway of the hallway. But on the pro level, they're separated. You come down two different things. On the amateur level, you'll sometimes be like you might come down this hallway, they're this hallway, but you're standing there looking at each other, and this guy goes, and this guy goes. But I mean,
he wasn't looking at me, but he was calm. That's my whole point, is that I got to see that before the fight.
Okay. So how'd the fight start off? How'd the fight start off?
Well, and that's what I was going to get into is there's a fighter meeting before every fight, and they clarify the rules and what they expect of you, what's okay and not okay, and they had stated specifically that if you want to touch gloves, clarify it. If you don't want to touch gloves, clarify it. And whenever we got in the cage, he put his hand up and he said no. He said, "We're not touching gloves." And it was like at that moment, all the questions.
So who put their hands up?
He did, my opponent. He told me, "Hey, we're not touching gloves. We're not."
He went like this, saying,
"Yeah, we're not touching gloves," and that was my reaction. I knew. I was instantly. It took away all the question. It took away,
So what did that tell you? What did that tell you?
It told me that he didn't want to touch gloves, personally, in my opinion, because he was too nervous and just needed to get into the fight. He was nervous about the fight. He was questioning himself and unsure of himself. Like how I said earlier, I know my ability is up here. My family and everyone's expecting me to perform up here. I know I can perform at this level, right? While his family was probably, expecting him to perform up here also. But he wasn't sure where he lied on that line. Mm-hmm. He wasn't sure where, how he could perform or where he was going to perform. And I feel like that's where that doubt, he let that doubt creep in, and you can't do that. You have to be sure of yourself. You have to know and accept that things can happen in this game and it might not go your way. But you have to be sure of where you stand. You know what I mean? You have to at least be confident of yourself, even if you're wrong, right?
Well, the issue is, was what we got back to before, is that if you're coming from a place of a false belief or a false narrative of self, then you could be, quote unquote, well, pretending to believe in yourself even though you don't. And that's the failure, is that's what I would have taken from him, not from the reactions, him not in the hands, is that he needs to make this personal, and he needs to make this like, because there is too much fear that this is not going to go his way. So he needs to really make this is not going to be fun. He's got to kill you. And the person, I've always said this in a fight, and fighters, because I've been around a lot of fighters that are at a decent level, and they're like, hey, I'm ready to go kill the guy and smash him. I'm like, that's not the winner. And they're like, and I was like, the guy,
no matter what, we're gonna get in there and try to do it no matter what. So
the guy who wants to kill someone will never beat the guy who wants to die.
Yeah.
And that was just something I came up with when I worked with fighters and life experiences. And it's very similar to something that's a little bit more popular and well said, is that, the guy who enjoys the walk will always go further than the guy who enjoys the destination.
Uh-huh.
You're right. Like, you got to be, the guy who has true gratitude is the one who can walk through hell, but be thankful he has legs to walk on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's always these parables or analogies of the conceptualization of being present where you are and being able to go like, I'm enjoying the process and the journey, and I'm willing to die at that, versus and we'll work on this later, is like, you're like in that journey point because you're there where you're like good with your own head, dismissive of where he's at, reading where he's at, enjoying it. You're the guy who's in the mindset, I'm willing to die and go out there. Like you said, we're going to do what we're going to do. We're going to make it do what it do, baby. Like, it's a little bit more of that younger mentality, but that's the essence of your, hey, I'm going to make it do what it do, baby. Let's just go in there and put it a show. You're ready to die, where he's like, I got to kill this guy or I'm going to get killed and I'm afraid.
Exactly.
We just got to get you out of this expectation mindset that it's all irrelevant what everybody else's expectations are, because you're just going to get more into that mindset of like, I'm going to make it do what it do. Like, I'm going to make it do what it do. And you're enjoyable to watch. Like, what? So hold on. I don't want to get too far off the fight, because I want to kind of do like a fight. So you come into the fight. We got the whole pre-read. Bell rings. What does he do? Does he back up? He comes at you. What's the fight? Walk us through.
I personally, I like to take the center of the cage, right? Mm-hmm. And whenever he did that, I knew that it was going to be, I knew that if I charged forward and just came and took the center of the cage, I knew it was just going to be like two bulls butting heads, and I wanted to avoid that, because I wanted to, I wanted to make it clean. You know what I mean? I wanted to have this performance be almost flawless, take as little damage as possible, and, land the best shots possible, make it clear that I won. So as soon as I saw him do, say that, hey, we're not going to touch gloves, I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to let him come forward and let him he can try to lead the dance, and I'll respond,
Yeah.
So I just came forward, and he instantly, this is where I felt like he made the biggest mistake, is he threw a jab to a leg kick maybe 3 times, and in between those 3 times tried to fake the leg kick. So he's trying he's
trying to read your feint, how you move on the feints.
Well, he threw a technique and didn't even land it clean. And then he's trying to get a reaction out of that technique that he never landed clean.
Gotcha.
So in my mind, I'm not even fucking worried about this leg kick. You're throwing this leg kick and you're throwing this feint thinking that I'm going to bite on it, whenever I'm not even thinking anything yet in the fight. I'm just thinking, how am I going to get you to react? Yeah. So that's where I feel like the major mistake is he was trying to force a reaction out of me, or trying to force like a desired reaction, versus I was just flowing, just going with the motions. I was just being water. I was just flowing and ready to crash. And then whenever his moment came in, I noticed, like, as he was stalking in, trying to throw the jab into the leg kick, his hands were right here. And then that's whenever he went to throw that leg kick and I was backed against the cage, which I slowly let myself circle off and back against the cage. I spun right into that spinning back fist and hit him clean. It rocked him for a second. And then you just instantly see him back up and he stops throwing so much. And then that's whenever my game starts to implement, because and that's my whole point about what he was doing wrong, was he didn't take the time. He wasn't patient enough to land a couple strikes and see what can I land and what does he do when I land it.
That's also his mindset. That's his mindset of like, I got to throw the jab kick. I got to react. I got versus let me just go. Let it be what it is. Let me just like, and you know as a fighter more than I do, like you have your game plan in your head, but it's like, and I've even heard Josh tell you, like you have your game plan, but it's all about the flow of it.
Well, like, there's also A, B, C, and D. There's this game plan. There's this game plan. There's this game plan. There's this one. And what's going to apply the best? Because I mean, going into the fight, I wanted to throw more push kicks and more teeps and more jabs. But getting into the fight or leading up to the fight, I thought, if he's still in that karate stance or if he's flat-footed at all, my best move is going to be footwork and angles and dancing around him. But if he's got better angles and footwork and defense, then mine's going to be my best game plan is going to be getting inside and throwing more punches and knees. And then, there's all these different things that are factors on how the fight's going to go and how your fight is going to go. What are you going to do to win your fight? And
just go. Finish up.
Well, whenever I got in there, it turns out it was a mix of everything. You know what I mean? I used footwork and angles, but he was also – his forward pressure was enough that I had to fight inside and that it was the best for me to fight inside. But his kicks, he was throwing mainly kicks, but he was applying too much forward pressure in that kick. He wasn't setting that kick up from the outside. He was just trying to blindly throw that kick. So I was able to stay inside and counter. I would defense and counter. And then be able to move laterally off that because I know that he's just throwing from one side. He's not threatening the middle and making me run into, a kick along the side or threatening the side and then coming down the middle. There was no thought process on that game plan of like.
Yeah, I think karate, that's a limitation of karate. It's very straightforward. It's very linear. Like everything's very linear. So here's a question I have for you because I still get confused, and for people listening. So the first live Muay Thai event I went to was in New York City. I had two fighters in the event. And it was like very Muay Thai. The music was there. Everyone came out with the headgear and almost like the right to dance. And I found when I kind of came down to Florida, it's like, and I know you were fighting in St. Louis, so maybe it's different in different places, but I feel that, there's like people get kickboxing and Muay Thai confused. But when I watch a kickboxing Muay Thai fight, like when I went to the ones in New York, I could clearly tell that was Muay Thai. Everything from the trunks to the way they came out, whereas I don't really see much of a difference in Muay Thai or kickboxing. What I saw in Valhalla, what I saw in Vigilant, I didn't see a ton of your tape. But like, what is the differential? Is MMA at the local level more of a blended where it's just like a lot of striking or is it like walk us through more of the differences and what's going on at the local level, because they're not very clear cut.
Okay, so I would say honestly they're ugly cousins. Like
I've heard that analogy. Yeah.
They're one of the same. Muay Thai, it's the art of 8. So I like to tell people all the time, you have all of your striking tools. You have hands, elbows, knees, and feet. And then I can trip you occasionally if that's the way I want to go. There's no limit on clinch time as long as I'm working. So I can hold your head and I can keep you right here and knee you and elbow you as much as I want. As long as I'm doing that, they're not going to break it up. Versus kickboxing, it's boxing and kicks. And you can throw one knee strike and exit. There is no clinch. I can't hold your head down. I can't pin your head down or clamp your head down with my hand. Now I can push and I can post and pin your arms against your face or against your body, but that's the limit at kickboxing. You cannot.
Okay, so like the big main difference is the clench, and because here's the other thing too.
No elbows.
You can't throw. Oh, so it's but you can elbow upon an exit. Well,
yeah.
So if you can't clench, not in kickboxing.
Can't elbow at all in kickboxing. No
knee. You can knee upon an exit.
Yeah.
But what are you exiting from if you can't clench?
Well, like I said, I can, like, let's say.
Oh, as I'm pushing you off knee, I can
let's say
defensive.
I hit you with a hook. I hit you with a body shot, or I hit you with a hook. I hit you with the right hand. Now, that right hand I just threw is posted against your head, holding your gloves on your face. I can throw a knee to your stomach, and I can exit. But I am unable to grab your head from behind and throw knees repeatedly, which
so kickboxing is kickboxing is much more like karate.
Because it's Taekwondo based. If you think about it, kickboxing comes from Taekwondo, while Muay Thai is the national art of Thailand, and that is itself. You know,
what was your fight?
Huh?
Your fight was Muay Thai.
Well, so I study Muay Thai.
What was your fight?
My fight was technically under K1 rules, so it was technically kickboxing rule set, but. And that's something also in the rules they clarified. You cannot grab their head. You cannot catch their kick and throw them or anything like that. And that's if you catch. So let's just say, for instance, with kickboxing, I could catch his kick and then I could throw one strike. But I have to let go of his kick after I throw that one strike. I can't hold on to it.
I remember that because I remember when I went out to Tampa and I did some sparring, that the guys I was sparring with were kickboxers. Because I remember that's what they were telling me was you can catch it, hit, and get out. I mean, I think some type of kickboxing where I could trip the guy, but when they hit the ground, like that's it.
Well, that's Muay Thai rules. You can trip them. I can throw you on the ground. I can trip you. I can dump you. But there is no ground.
I can't like single, and I can't single leg you. I can trip you, but I can't like. It was weird because that was the hardest thing for me is being someone. Even as someone who didn't train in any, so I studied karate. You're talking maybe I think it was like 4th, 5th, 6th grade at a very structured style, and then I want to say maybe I stopped in 7th, then picked it back up somewhere in 9th or 8th, all the way somewhere in high school through somewhere in the beginning of college, like 4 years where I'd come home in summers and I would train Shirin-Jiru. Which was Shirin-Jiru. It's not Shotokan. Shirin-Jiru. It's a Japanese style of like a karate. That was my friend's father, who was like a North American Kumite champion. Got his 8th degree black belt in Japan. Very serious fighter. He had some issues with alcoholism. That is why he ended up losing like 2 studios and not doing well. But he was much older when I had met him. Right. So he was probably 60s going into 70s. He's passed away now, but he was the most intense sense I had. So that's where I actually learned so the first one was just all pretty styles. I was great at katas. I did a bunch of tournaments, but I never did really well. I never felt comfortable in tournaments. They were weird, like Kumite ones. Then took a break for like 2 years or 4 years, 3 years, got into football, went back to karate and boxing. But it was very off. It was very unstructured. It was like off seasons. But anyway, my point is, for me, it even got like I was not rooted in any one style, so it was still confusing to me because I'd go to one gym and be like, okay, we're going to do jujitsu. Yeah. And I was like, I kind of get the rules here. All right, I can't, like wrestling is whatever. They're similar. Then you flip over to kickboxing, right? And then you're like MMA, and then you're like, okay, we're going to do a couple rounds of Muay Thai because at that time, I was right before I met you. I was bouncing to a couple of different places in Tampa with a couple guys training at different places. Yeah. So the concept was, let's see if I could handle jumping in all these different styles, and I could handle sparring. Maybe that's when I had in my head I'd do a fight. Right. okay, let me go spar. But it got confusing, like the fucking different, like, okay, you can trip him, but you can hit him once. You can't hit him once. Okay, I'm like, oh my God, dude, this is like.
Well, and that's why, it's for me. It just like
Do you ever find?
so
Do
much
you ever get confused when you're in there and like, oh shit, there was something you're not supposed to?
And so that's why I was bringing it up, was because in the second round, we come out in the second round, right? And he kicks me in the nuts immediately. He goes to throw an inside low kick, and he kicks me in the nuts. And as he kicks me in the nuts, I reach up, grab his head, and I throw a knee. And whenever I'm in that split second, I say, "Hey, watch your kicks." Like, "Hey, watch your kicks. You hit me in the nuts." And we back up out of range, and then he hits me in the nuts again. And I just stop, and I'm like, "Yo, what the fuck, dude? I just told you watch your kicks." And the ref kind of gets in between us because, I'm getting emotional about it. Like, dude, like, it's not that hard to, not kick someone in the nuts. Like, literally just stop being a fucking spaz. Stop being fucking, super nervous and anxious, and control yourself.
Which he can't.
Yeah. And the ref takes me aside, and, I told him, I'm like, yo, he just fucking hit me in the dick twice, like, in a row. You know what I mean? It was, like, deliberately, like, one after another. Mm-hmm. And what's it called? He said, hey, do you think he did it on purpose? I said, no. He's like, okay, you keep catching his kicks and grabbing his head, which you're not supposed to do also. But he said, do I think you're doing it on purpose? And I was like, no, I'm not. He's like, okay, and that's why I haven't said anything. So I'll say something to him, but just relax, just chill. He's not trying to kick you in the dick. So just fucking, take a chill pill and, let the fight go on. And I later on, I talked to that ref because I was walking back from going to my room real quick, and I was walking back to go see my family and friends. And I saw the ref, so I stopped to talk to him, and I said, hey, was I really grabbing onto his head for that long? Because in the moment, it feels like, I might put my hand up there, but it's not like I'm holding on to it, which watching the clips later on, I was definitely
holding on.
Yeah. He tells me, he's like, that's why I understand, because what do you train? You train Muay Thai. So you train holding on to people's heads and holding on to their kicks and not having a limit on that. So I understand, he's I'm not going to foul you for something you're not doing intentionally. And then, on top of that, I was still following the rule technically, but I was
lingering a little too much.
Yeah, I was lingering too long with the head. I was lingering too long holding the kicks and holding his head. It should have been like a boom, boom instead of boom, boom. Yeah, like, and there was just too much of a second of like hesitation in between. So
and the refs know, like, at that level, if people don't know behind the scenes, part of the reason you have to do this is there's not as many good opportunities, as many good organized venues that you can just always do Muay Thai or always do kickboxing.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so a lot of times I've been a part of these behind the scenes where, whether it's fighters dropping out last minute, whether it's, getting a good fight match, like you said, like the one thing that very much bothered me about what seemed to be a generational issue with fighters like 30-ish and under, was they were almost like little bitches about their record.
Yeah.
Especially like, and I said, dude, that's why you were elevated in your thought process of what your amateur record means, is that everyone was bitching about who they were getting matched up with. Like, and then to make the matters worse, then because everybody was being a bitch about who they're matching up with, you got people not being honest. Like what happened with you. Like, that happened to you twice. Oh, he's 0-0. Well, he's 0-0 in kickboxing, but he's got 3 fucking MMA fights. That's a big deal when you walk down, like, even at an amateur venue that it might only be a few hundred people, walking down the fucking the ramp or walking down and having the people there and getting inside the cage. That, like, I can tell you from an outside person's perspective, from being in the fans to flip back, being with a fighter, watching the whole thing, being in the dressing room with them, and being at the small venue and the big venue, that's a lot of shit. Like, especially if the guy you were dealing with, he could have done 100 karate tournaments. They wouldn't have had that intensity, energy level of one of these MMA fights in today's media or whatever market, right? So that's part of it. Talk about a little bit about, let's switch gears a little bit about for the fight. let's talk a little bit about the training for the fight. So like we go, walk us through a little bit. When I met you, like I said, I met you in your first, I was a color commentating your first fight. We met up after that. Walk me a little bit through about, what was your training like before you met me? What was it like meeting me, and what, what's different?
Well, I would say before I met you, I was just overtraining a lot.
Yeah, you were.
All of my sessions, any session I did was like 2.5, 3 hours long with like no meal in between, no extra fuel. It was just, I would go roll out and then I would work out for like 3 hours. And, it's not like I really noticed a difference at the time, or like noticed like it being a problem at the time, until I started training with you and training differently. And we're now, there might be some times where a training session goes barely over an hour, but I'm eating directly after that. Within 20 minutes after that training session, I'm eating right after that. And then if I'm going to go work out again, I've got, a 20-minute to 30-minute break, maybe an hour-long break at least before I go work out again. And then it goes back to, once again, I'm doing some active recovery or some, foam rolling, some sort of soft tissue work before the workout, before every single workout, after every workout. You know what I mean? There's more structure to it now. And I've noticed the difference in how I feel and how I perform in each workout, because I have more energy and I have more, fuel in my body. Like you said, you can't make a car faster by just driving that car faster. You have to make changes to it. You have to take it to the shop and, change these different things. Take this out, put this in. Oh, wait, I want to put this back in, and then take, you know what I mean? You're constantly making adjustments to your system, and, like doing little tests on how your system works with this program, or how you feel whenever you eat this. And I feel like that's been one of the biggest things or something that's played a benefit so largely in my performance now, is specifically knowing how my body works and being more in tune with my body, knowing what I do or what I need to do to feel the best and perform the best beforehand. That's where, before this fight, I was calm before, my fight with Vigilant and Valhalla. I was calm within both of those. But this one, it literally felt like I was just another day in sparring, another day in training. There was nothing, spectacular about it. I felt like I was just there, just doing my thing. I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be, exactly where I was supposed to be at that time. It was honestly spectacular. It was amazing, and my body felt amazing. I was just sitting back there, just rolling out, eating some honey, eating a little bit of grapes and pineapple, a little bit of pineapple. Yeah. Just relaxing, and I'm not eating too much. I'm just taking a little bit of bites. I'm like, okay, that's enough. I cut that off. Oh, I got an hour till training. I can have a little bit more. I got an hour till I fight. Yeah, I'm counting down the times. I know exactly when I'm supposed to eat, what I'm supposed to eat. I had eaten. How many times did I eat that day before the fight? Like 5 times. I ate 5 times, not counting breakfast leading up to the fight. Steak and sweet potato with like a little bit of honey and just stuff like that. And just it was every 2 hours, you know what I mean? Or every hour or so, I was eating another meal. I had just been in places.
Did you weigh yourself by the time you? Well, we don't do hard weight cuts with you. You've never had to do a hard weight cut.
I'm wanting to soon, but so just for perspective for anyone watching or anyone listening, I started my weight cut at 170. Okay. I weighed in at 154, and then fight night before I got into the cage, I was 168. So
170. Yeah, 174 to 155.
Yeah, 170
back up to 168.
Yep.
174 to 155, and then back up to 168. That's not bad, man. That's good. Here's the thing too, for those watching, like you, I've had some really impressive weight cut results and strength training results with clients. You're the first fighter that I did almost 100% like digital.
Yeah.
Right. You didn't meet like 90 to 95% of your workouts, except for a few in the very beginning. were all online. And to give everybody out there the perspective of what it was like with working with me was there was a lot more heavy attention in the beginning. You know, I did an in-person assessment. We did 1 or 2 workouts, came to your 2-year fights.
Yeah.
By the last fight, it was more of you just being like, okay, of the 90% of the things I needed to do for my diet, out of the 100% of the things I needed to do my diet, 90% of them I do on my own. I got to check with John only on 10%.
Yeah.
Right. Like at the last minute, they changed the weight. I got a little more pounds. What should I adjust? And that's something that I'm big on. One, every time I've gotten a fighter, they're just like you from the perspective is they're just way fucking overtraining.
Well,
they're way over fighters, way overtrained. I saw 2 comments that really were aggravating. One was John Donahere, who's a very popular, well-known jiu-jitsu guy. And I don't know if it's just a clip taken out of context, but it was running online where he was like, I've never seen the diet of what somebody eats affect their jiu-jitsu. And I was like, then because you're not skilled enough to look at it. Like, I hate to say it, but I guarantee, like, I've seen it in fighters. I can tell you why, is because you're not going to see it in the micro, like training sessions. You're going to see it when it comes down to the body being pushed to its maximum limit. And I'm telling you right now, it's not like what's going on in the training session is not going on what's in the ring. And then
to add something on that.
Which one? What? Go ahead. Yeah.
Just to add something on that. I mean, you go eat a burger and some cheese curds or some fries, and then I want you to go do the most intense workout you can possibly do for an hour and a half and tell me how you feel after that. Or eat a steak, avocado, a little bit of spinach, a little bit of sweet potato, maybe a little bit of honey on top of that, and then go do the same exact workout as hard as you possibly can and tell me how you feel after that. After the burger and the fries, you're going to feel like death and you're going to feel like you need to eat. While the steak and, everything, the sweet potato, you might be hungry, but let's just put it at that.
So yes and no. If you've worked on your digestion so you can eat something heavier and break it down before you train. What someone like Donna here would say, my guess is like, look, I don't mean eating right before, because there's guys like fucking John Jones who will go eat McDonald's and then go whoop somebody's ass. But he's also a guy that'll do cocaine for 2 nights straight and then go beat an Olympic wrestler. Like John's is not the guy that we want to use the example for every young athlete to model their training. He's a phenom. So that's, and the other problem that what I mean by the trained eye is that it's that people always think, oh, well, like I ate and I dieted. Like everyone's in these very short windows. The way your diet affects you is that's why when you're a fighter and you're like, oh, I could fucking go so many rounds in my 20s, but now in my 40s, everything is falling apart. Mm-hmm. And as you saw, when I was in my 40s, and the reason I was even thinking about taking like a real MMA fight was because through Bulldog and through training out in Tampa, like I was going toe to toe with 20-year-olds and none of my shit was breaking. It wasn't until I got into the weight cut and a lot of other personal issues affected me when I had the knee injury. But for a 45, 46-year-old to be crushing people on the mat, going toe-to-toe with kickboxers that are 3-1, you know what I mean? Like it didn't make any sense. And they were hurting afterwards. And my body was fine, was 2 things. One, wear and tear. Like Donnie here and these guys are looking at this like, well, I don't look at the diet affecting them now. They're in their 20s or in the 5 years they're training. No, it's like a viscosity breakdown over 15 years. Eating shitty food will clog the body up so that you think it's old age breaking you down. What a lot of like Donna here and these guys don't realize is like, where are you taking your jiu-jitsu from Gracie? Okay, here's a funny story about Gracie jiu-jitsu that a lot of people ignore, is that along with jiu-jitsu, Gracie had their own diet. It was called the Gracie diet. And if you train jiu-jitsu, you also follow their diet. And it was really what?
Which is all whole foods. If you look at anything,
which is pretty much all whole foods, naturally cooked. It's not too dissimilar from a keto / paleo / it's a very protein, fat heavy diet, but it's got tons of fruits in it. But a lot of the fruits and vegetables are just raw. You're eating very, so, and there's a book. I'm pretty sure the book is called The Gracie Diet. But, you look at people that follow, when you look at Muay Thai people, go to Thailand, how many fat Muay Thai fighters are there? Not many. But you come to the States and you see these heavyweight. Like I don't even know if there's is there a heavyweight category for Muay Thai? I don't know if there's even anything. It's like but nothing like you see like here. Heavyweight boxing and heavyweight MMA is a big thing. I very rarely see the heavyweights. Like they're all slim, lean, shredded.
And that's the thing too, is if you see them in Thailand, if you see a heavyweight fight in Thailand, they're usually foreigners.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Or it's a tuk-tuk driver that they're just putting in there to win some bets. And it'll be like the tuk-tuk driver versus a foreigner. And,
you see I've seen the fat guy smoking the cigarette, and he goes out there, like
that's actually from a movie clip. That's not real. Common.
Oh, that's not even a real clip.
Oh, that's believe. Yeah, I know. I love that clip. I love that video.
Better.
But that's actually from a movie in Thailand.
So here's the other thing too with the diet. When you notice, like, when I approached the dieting, I took a lot of stuff that I had learned by mixing. Bless you. So in putting the diet together, which is really different than what almost any other diet coach out there I've seen there do, is maybe except for one, is I looked at taking foundational principles from Paul Chek, and I took foundational principles from Charles Poliquin in his course Biosignature, and I really started building a diet based on the hormonal reactions of food, but using a rotation diet that's kind of taught by Chek. So it's like combining a rotation diet along with a hormone-based diet. And again, how many times have I asked you to count calories?
No.
Not one fighter I've ever, and I have weight cuts that, and I feel, I have weight cuts that, fighters are dropping 20, 21 pounds and putting 25 back on before they fight, vascular, because it's a lot of people don't understand, like with the diet, there's no calculator inside your computer that's weighing it all out, So the exact amount of food you put in your body is less relevant than the state of digestion in coordination with the hormonal reaction of that food, given your cycle of your weight cut. So,
and that's where too is, I'll leave the names out of it, but I have a very close family member and friend who's done dieting and lifted, worked out his whole entire life, for the most part. And he started your diet last week, and he lost 8 pounds within this last week. He's lost 8 pounds, and he's eating more food than he was eating before whenever he was on his own, whenever he was on the diet that he had gotten from bodybuilders and, his coach and all these different guys. And now he has dropped 8 pounds. I mean, it's only been a week. But
let me say that
he's eating more
pounds in a week and eating more food.
So eating more than he ever ate.
So let me say this, so I get the soundbite clip. An overwhelming amount of bodybuilding coaches out there are fucktards. They're just retarded. Like they are. They're morons. We were saving a bunch of clips to do some stuff where like there's guys now that are just like, they're literally telling people how to inject steroids and stuff into them because, again, I've softened my stance on men that want to take steroids. I understand it, especially
it's perfectly fine as long as you're not competing in a professional sport or amateur sport. As long as you're not competing in a sport, I feel like it is fine. Go ahead.
And I understand. Yeah, exactly. And but however, because of that, you've got a whole genesis of these coaches that even though they have a degree and they might be a doctorate, all the way down to the guys that just fucking took a ton of steroids, got shredded, and then told everybody, "Oh, here's the workouts I did. Here's the diet I did." Yeah. When you're taking, here's the truth about steroids. It doesn't completely disprove the science of your workout program, but what it does do is two things. It pads your results, and it makes dealing with the difficult times easy. One of the hardest mental things about working out, you can attest to this as a fighter, is that there's no guarantees. Yeah. Like, why the fuck am I doing this? Why am there's no guarantee I'm going to be stronger tomorrow. There's no guarantee I'm going to win the fight. There's no guarantee I'm going to feel better tomorrow. Fuck, I'm probably going to feel worse. That doesn't happen on anabolic steroids or growth hormone. You feel better the worse you work out. If you miss food, you just grow less. Not that if you're 100% natural and you're in a weight-based sport, missing a meal and being off on a hormonal reaction of a meal it's not more than just feeling flat. It could cause an injury.
Yeah.
It could cause an injury. You could just dehydrate at a level where now which is what I did, not adapting, moving to Florida, which was tremendously hotter, training 3-4 times a day.
Yeah.
Right. And just doing one more round without getting my full water in.
Yeah.
I'm 100% believer that like I was in ownership of my injury.
Yeah.
And I did exactly what I argue with my clients about. So anyway, my here's the sound bit clip is
Easy to do.
These bodybuilding coaches don't know what the fuck they're doing. And the one thing you realize is how irrelevant calories are. You know, so you can go and you can watch the Fight Dietitian. He's all about calories. But when he's about calories, he's really fucking tuned into the calories. When you have the bodybuilding coaches, they don't understand. What is one of the first things I said to you is if you want to lose weight, you need to eat a lot. If you want to gain weight, you need to eat a fuck ton a lot. And that blows the entire calorie myth out of the water. Because what you don't understand is that if you're in a calorie deficit, and everyone's like, "Well, how do you put on fat weight if you're in a calorie deficit?" It's like, just explain to me the reaction of cortisol when it's running rampant in the body. Explain to me the reaction of the body when resistant to insulin.
Well, and cortisol can be higher if you're not fueling yourself and you feel like you're starving. If your body's in panic mode and doesn't know whenever it's going to get its next meal, you're going to be stressed out and you're going to hold on to more weight. And that's where I always explain it to people is, you know, eating to lose weight is like adding coal to a dying fire. You have to add fuel to that fire to get it to burn hotter. You don't just blow on it. You know, you don't just feed it oxygen. You got to add wood, you got to add paper, you got to add coal, and then you got to blow on it and feed a little bit of oxygen to it. And it doesn't matter if it's just a little bit or a little bit more. It's the main thing you don't want is to pull it all out, to take all of that fuel away, or to put one big wet log on top of it. That's how you kill the fire.
And if you're injecting a steroid, then it's irrelevant because the fire is always stoked. You can put. So when you have somebody, that's why I really don't work with. Like I say, there's two people I really don't work with: atheists. There's three people I don't work with: atheists, vegans, and bodybuilders.
You said fuck them, fuck that three.
Well, here's one. Because this is so prevalent in the social media world, like the veganism is big in the holistic world. Like I'm always running into some dipshit that wants to tell me they're saving the world when they don't even understand socioeconomic and the impacts of like biodynamic farming. They're just fucking clueless, but it's cool to like post it on their social media and to say like they just eat veggies. Because the other thing too is like you'll drop weight quickly that way. Yeah, because a lot of your muscle is built from animal fat and animal protein. Like I was just talking to somebody who was like, yeah, anyway, atheists, vegans, and bodybuilders, because the mindset is vegans, you're just wrong. Like every argument, unless it's religious, every argument's incorrect. And I don't have the time to teach you socioeconomic conditions. I don't have the time to teach you biodynamic farming. I don't have the time to open your mind. That's kind of also what I get paid for. So like you're out. I don't deal with the atheists because when I started a couple years ago, that came about. And the funny thing too is also a throwaway statement. I've never met an atheist that asked me to coach them. I have met vegans that I said no to. Many. I used to have a mission where if I met you and you said you were a vegan, it was my mission to convert you. I've never failed at converting a vegan because I could right. But it became too time consuming. I made no money on it. And the argument always comes down to, well, yes, I could make you just as successful physically as a vegan, whether it's performance or look or even health, but you would have to get blood lipid panels done more. And I'd have to be 10 times more involved in your diet and training because there's a lot of base elements when you're training, especially for performance, that aren't going to be prevalent in the plants that are in the animals that we're going to have to now supplement with. So now I have to. So if you want to pay me 10 times as much as my fee, I'll do 10 times as much as work for your fucking soapbox bullshit. Like wannabe vegan, change the world bullshit. So that's an atheist I never run into, but I started doing a lot more of the spiritual side of things when I got into holistic training and just simple things like working with journaling. You know, a big component of what you said was working with me and the dieting is starting to become more self-aware of your body and how your body reacts to things.
Yeah.
What diets, what foods, and what type of sleep patterns. So all of those are stepping stones to leading somebody down to a higher path. Yeah. You know, I don't care what your higher path is, and I don't care what you believe in, as long as whatever you believe in that higher path is wrapped in some type of goodness. You know, like, and this is truthfully, I have run into people that are involved with the Church of Satan. Yeah. And it's almost
about that before.
Yeah, it's almost hilarious how much they fool themselves into thinking that their higher being is of something of goodness. So those I'd knock out. And then bodybuilders, which is getting to what we spoke about, is just I'm not going to sit here again like the vegan and try and open up your mind to the fact that you're listening to some fucking juice head and you're probably doing, and if you got results on their diet and training, it's because you took juice too. And if you're telling me you didn't, I know you're fucking lying, because I know the biochemical breakdowns. You cannot grow testosterone in the human body by just eating boiled chicken and fucking broccoli. There's no cholesterol, there's no fat, i.e. there's no building block for you to be above 200 pounds and shredded. Shut up. Game over. We're done talking. You've now aggravated my day, broken my peace. I've aggravated my day, broken my peace. I'm in a cycle of goddamn violence the rest of the day. And my number one client has to be me and keeping my peace, right? So as a coach. So that's why I have always kicked those three out of, like, you know, even working with them. I don't think bodybuilding is a sport. It's not a sport. It's an activity. But it's and I said this on another podcast. The worst thing that ever happened to weightlifting and training and health was Arnold Schwarzenegger. He is the golden goat. I think he's an embarrassment to health and fitness. That's something I get crucified for, because like everybody, even like some holistic people, think he's great. And without going on the side of it, it's like all the guy did was cheat to win. Like, the whole sport of bodybuilding is just literally with steroids. We need to stop pretending it's not. You know, bodybuilders are dying fucking left and right every year. They're dying all the time.
Well, it kills them faster. It literally, the steroids kill you faster.
Well, it's not only just the steroids, it's because you can do more things unhealthy and get results on steroids that you're doing more damage to the body in a lot of different ways. Like, you don't have to sleep. This idea that I'm not going to sleep, but I still make my training session. It's like, you just fucking blew your whole fucking workout, because you know this from being a client of mine, is that results happen when you recover. Yeah. You have to always out recover your workout. You never sacrifice recovery for a workout. That's another lie a lot of bodybuilding and these strength coaches start getting their clients into. It's why a lot of fighters overtrain. It's well, that's what my coach did, what my coach do. It's like, okay, well, your coach was fucking training in a goddamn ghetto in Brazil, and to keep you guys from getting in gang violence, you had to train 18 hours a day. That's not when you're dropping your kids off at school. Do you know what I'm saying? In America, it's like we've got to let some of the science we got to let. Now, they'll keep that culture, but then they'll throw out the culture of the diet. Or what I saw when I started studying Kung Fu, which I thought was a beautiful art, and I said this, like, I can't, it's hard to look at someone who's considered a master of Kung Fu or a master of karate and they're obese.
You don't see it. You don't really see it.
No, you do see it. You see it a lot. Like, I had this conversation
with monks, I feel like.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You don't see it in the monks. You don't see it in the ancient arts, because they all not only had the fighting martial art, but the art was not only the combat, it was the mentality, which was the spirituality, and it was the lifestyle, the nutrition, and the sleep, which gave to the mindset and the personality, which created balance with the physical. And I don't care what art you look at, jiu-jitsu, box, except for Krav Maga. And I think like Filipino stick fighting, those were derived more modern and even for direct survival, not combat, survival, different. Survival, right? Like, it's like, I'm going to be killed or I need to kill someone. Where you looked at, being a history person, I look at the history of a lot of these ancient Eastern styles were derived from what was taught in villages as part of their lifestyle of balance, like coming from a Tai Chi, Qigong type of methodology, flowing, breathing, control your heart rate, to occupied lands where they needed to learn how to defend themselves. So that's why the bow became powerful, because the bow could be a mop, could be a rake, could be a hoe, could be a shovel, right? Like, not steel was expensive. Not everybody learned how to fight with a sword. Very few classes in feudal Japan had the ability, or even China, to afford steel to have a fucking sword. So when you look at that, like, everything was intertwined. We as Americans, through UFC, as beautiful as I love it, and mixed martial arts, it's like only 10% mixed. We've only mixed the fighting styles. We haven't mixed the lifestyles. So when you look at the Americanization of something like karate that came through the 80s, go fucking look at how many fat black belts you'll see. Ooh. It's insane. Now jiu-jitsu is becoming the same thing. You'll hear people talking shit about jiu-jitsu now saying, well, now jiu-jitsu has become the 80s karate where you're finding one on every dude. I went to one the other day here in Florida that calls itself a Gracie combat system. It was a shit show. And the guy was like, they invited me to roll. I was going to roll. And then they were like, I'm a white belt, like no stripes. So they were like, oh, I was like, well, when's your open mat? I just want to work on some like just conditioning and open mat. They're like, oh, we don't allow white belts to open roll at all, like ever. Yeah. Like there's no, so like the equipment, he's like, oh, sparring. And I'm like, first of all, it's not, it's like, I was just like, it's not even sparring. You're the owner of the place. Yeah. And I was like, he's like, well, you study, I was at Gracie Baja. He's like, oh, well, you do Gracie Baja. That's more competition. We're more combat. I'm like, how the fuck? I literally said, I was like, how the fuck are you combat? Like, you're a white belt. You should be a white belt for a few years. Like, how are you a white belt and you never had a live fighting experience, but you're calling yourself a combat system and you're calling us competition? I was like, dude, I will break one of you guys. Like, so anyway, my thing is, I think
it's funny how jiu-jitsu guys, they'll call rolling a fight, or they'll call a match a fight, or they'll, like you just said, an open mat, they'll call it sparring. You're not.
Well, see that those I would not call those real BJJ guys, because like if you like, I've been at some of the best. I've been around what I could easily say I've been around some of the best BJJ instructors and people. That includes I spent time at the Blue Basement at Renzo Gracie's in New York City. This guy Mike Bidramello, it's called Happy Pill, I think is his Instagram, and that's Renzo's top no-gi instructor, and I've done class with him, and I've been around Igor, who's one of the top black belts for Gracie Baja down here in Florida, and his black belts. So from north to south, Renzo Gracie Baja to Renzo Gracie. Like, this is Renzo Gracie's, like Renzo. His daughter works, where his soon to be whatever stepson trains out of, like where he goes to work out. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so those two big name, what I consider big, 30, 40-year practitioners from Brazil. Yeah. When you listen to them and they instruct, it's all about turning a fight into like a dance on purpose, because everyone else that's trying to, anytime in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if you start to get into that fight mentality, like, I'm gonna, you lose it. It's much more about what I felt very akin to to Kung Fu. Where in Kung Fu, we have these hand dances where it's very smooth, but you see them do on the hand wall. And I feel when you see two good jiu-jitsu practitioners roll, it's like they'll get the person right to the point where they're about to submit and then let them get out of it on purpose. Yeah. So the other black belt can practice getting out of the submission and then rolling. And then it's almost like this beautiful dance. They don't ever want to call it fighting or sparring. That's why, like, when I was around those top guys, I never heard them call it sparring. They called it rolling. Yeah. And that's what we always said, like, stop. They would say to me, like, stop making it a fight, Billington. Like, John, stop making it a fight. Roll with it. Breathe, roll. Slow. Right? Yeah. Like, so I feel like there's when I went out after only doing a few weeks at Gracie Baja, I went out to Tampa, like I told you, as I was going out. And I went and rolled with a couple of those guys, no gi. And there were guys that were supposedly upper belts that I was fucking just bulldogging, just bossing. Yeah. And I was pulling off moves that Igor had showed me, the head professor at Gracie Baja. Like, he had showed me once. I was able to pull them off. And I realized finally for the first time what from New York, New Jersey down to Florida, those long instructors were telling me about fighting versus rolling and flowing, was those guys were trying to fight. They were trying to fuck me up. They were trying to prove a point. They were trying to show either the old guy or the new guy that this other guy was bringing around couldn't hang with them. This right, and I could feel their strain, and I could feel their stress, and I could feel all their mistakes. And I'm like, dude, you're trying to fight me, and I'm just whoop, shit, whoop. Like, it felt like I felt so elevated. And then I went back to Gracie Baja. They just fucking beat the shit out of me. But it was
that's the thing though with martial arts. It's like the tension is hesitation. The tension takes more time. Yeah. Trying to muscle through something is not going to make you more powerful or faster. Doing it effortlessly.
But I'll disagree with you. In wrestling and a lot of groundwork, you can fucking very well muscle through things. Like I've seen fights at
make you slower.
What?
I would say it's going to make you slower at the end of the day. I don't know. Little debate.
Yeah, when look at any of your look at any of your high level wrestlers.
Yeah,
right. That's a lot of
explosive, but they're also flowing, explosive.
Not like jujitsu. Not like jujitsu. Not like jujitsu. There's a lot more. I think wrestlers will even tell you.
Yeah,
there's a lot more powering out of things in wrestling. That's why they train like they train.
Well, that's why they drill like that. They drill like that in order to perform like that. But in the actual moment, you can never I'm not going to be able to force the half Nelson in. I have to train the half Nelson that I power drive my fist through it. Where I'm not.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You're never going to power a submission in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, no,
never.
No. But that's
you can against a less you've heard me say this. Like you give me any white belt within 5 years of my age and 5 pounds of my weight, and I think I'll fucking bulldog them left and right because I think I can outpower a lesser skilled opponent. But when I go to power a fucking black belt.
Yeah.
Right. Or they take all of your power and that's the art, that's the flow. And they turn it against me. Next thing you know, I'm fucking choking myself. And right. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm like, I thought I was going to snap his spine, and now you're drooling.
Well, and that's where too is I feel like jiu-jitsu, whenever you train, it is much more gentle, and that's also because you're training to change someone's life. You're training to be able to snap their arm, their neck, their legs, all these different things. While in wrestling, I'm training to pin you to the ground.
Yeah, well, 100%.
Flip you over as fast as I can and pin you to your back.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You can power. You need power because you're also protected. I can power through and slam you and pin my hands on the ground. There's nothing you can do about that. That's the first thing I learned about wrestling. That's a bad carryover to jiu-jitsu is planting your hand.
Yeah.
And nowadays we look at the statistics like, oh, wrestlers dominate in MMA. That's only because that didn't happen in the beginning. Before we started mixing styles, Dan the Beast Severn was mutilating people until fucking Royce Gracie could have killed him in no time at all. And what did Dan do? He powered through, dominated him, posted his fucking hand, which allowed him to get the hand, expose his neck, and choke him out.
Yeah.
But wrestlers started I had to learn that because I trained a lot of wrestlers before I got into jiu-jitsu. Was my first week, that's the first thing everybody who trained with me in jiu-jitsu was like, stop posting, get that wrestling shit out of your head. Stop posting.
Yeah.
And they're like, how many years you wrestle? I'm like, I wrestled for, I think 2 weeks in high school before I admittedly quit. But I trained a lot of wrestlers. So as you know, I'll go and train and do the wrestling, or I'll go and do sparring, or I'll go and do whatever the athlete's sport is. I'll go and do it with them.
You're not formally training it. Yeah,
exactly. So posting my hand was very natural to me. I did that on my other podcast. I was talking about how went and did because I was training an athlete who was bitching about, oh, your weight cut stuff's not going to work. I was like, oh, I'll do the weight cut with you. And he was like, well, you don't have the pressure of actually to perform in a tournament. I was like, then I'll do the tournament with you. And he was like, well, what if you? And I was like, that's where. And I was like, where very early on, people realized I was like, I don't care about winning. I just want to fucking go out there and be hurt and get hurt. I want to enjoy the fight. Yeah. And I took third in the tournament, and I almost beat a Division I wrestler. I reversed near pinned, and only lost by 1 point to a Division I wrestler.
Nice.
I walked out. I still to this day feel pretty damn good about that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I had no business. I should have been destroyed.
Yeah.
But again, I always thought that made me a fucking much better strength coach.
Yeah.
And after that client never not did what I told him to do after that, because he was like, the dude I almost beat was a dude who tore him up in high school.
Damn. Yeah.
So he was like, oh, okay. Maybe I need to rethink what coach is telling me here.
Yeah, he's reflected a little bit.
The same thing when I got with those MMA fighters, and I was trying to talk them about the meditation and the thinking and the journaling. And I'm like, listen, they're like, I had the very long beard and I had really long hair, and I was coming up from Florida, and they were all like, and I was like, all right, let's spar, like hold the mitts. I remember the first time one of those dudes held mitts for me, they were like, dude, ease up. And I'm like, I'm not even throwing yet. And they're like, what? And I started throwing, and I had a 170er pro fighter, and I had a 145 pro boxer. And both of them were like, dude, you hit somebody with that. He's like, they're going out.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I could turn it up a little bit more. They're like, give me. And I just went there. I'm throwing mitts, and they're like, this is enough. They're like, holy shit. And that was when I first got into my head. And then that was my first shoulder injury, which was a non-training injury. That was a personal, stupid injury of stuff. Yeah. So we'll leave off this podcast. But that was the shoulder injury that held me up for like 6 months. And I still was shredded. I still got shredded. That's when, it was a blessing. I had to learn how to really overcompensate with diet and overcompensate with cardio. That's when I really got into sprint training. And I started incorporating a lot with my fighters, and that fight weight cuts were even a lot easier, and the sprint training carried over to fights. I remember I had one guy who could never get past like 11, 12 rounds of sparring, which, I fucking hate. Like, why people spar 10 rounds for a 4-round fight is beyond me. You know what I mean? It's never made sense.
5 round.
Yeah, 5-round, it never makes sense. But anyway, just to show the point, we stopped doing all of that type of extended cardio training, target heart rate, and we just went to a lot of sprint variation training. And he went back in there after like 2 weeks off, and he went 15 rounds without even fight. He was like, dude, they told me 14. Like, the coach made me stop. He's like, I was barely out of breath. I just kept going and going. He goes, I started after 10, I was tired at the beginning, but every fresh guy, because they did Shark Tank, it was a new person around. He goes, by the end of that round, even though the guy was fresh, they were more tired than me.
Yeah. Well, and that's where too is like heart rate. One of the things that I've taken a lot from just our training is the nasal breathing, being able to raise your VO2 max and control your heart rate variability. Like, how fast I'm able to recover and how fast or how long I'm able to hold the max heart rate and how fast I'm able to recover after that. People neglect that and don't understand the importance of heart rate variability because they don't understand what that means or understand like how the fight works.
Yeah, everyone thinks it's all mental. Like, I got to train this hard because I got to be mentally tough. It's like, listen, you don't have to deal with extreme amounts of pain in a fight if your body is conditioned to be at an optimal level where you're not feeling that pain. So the only pain you should be focused on the fight is the pain of the combat, like getting hit or kicked, not my heart's pounding in my chest or my gas tank's empty. Because how many fighters do you see where they go through like my business? We hit 1:30, so we're gonna wrap up in a minute. So maybe we'll end on this one. The proof for me is look at Tony Ferguson and David Goggins.
Yeah.
Like, this whole idea that you got to train like a fucking maniac and that's going to make you mentally tougher to be a better fighter. Look, like, I wish there was a way that I could get a hold of Tony Ferguson for, like, if you were to fight again and be like, give me 90 days my way and watch, people will think you're 20 again.
Yeah.
And
I agree. I genuinely believe that.
This idea of Goggins telling everybody, and it sucks too, because it got like compounded when Andrew Uberman did the podcast. And I normally love what he says. And I think I think Uberman, far be it for me to criticize him, but he was like, oh, well, there's this center in your brain that when you do really hard things, it now equips you to do more hard things and more hard things. Right? So that's really the neurological huge benefit of this Goggins type of mentality of do these hard things.
Yeah.
The problem now it's like, that doesn't mean you have to do everything hard. Like, there's a diet coach in Jersey. And again, to be clear, he was on the UFC, Mike Dolce. I don't 100% agree with the way his diet goes, in the same way I don't 100% agree with the way the fight dish dietitian does his dieting. But again, they're extremely successful in their results. They're very calorie based, but they know their calorie based system really well. Again, I forget who Dolce's trained. He trained some local Jersey fighters. So there was like a kid I did his strength and conditioning, but he was a Dolce certified diet guy. So he did his own diet. It was all very calorie based. And he would do big 20-pound drops, but he just looked like fucking hell. He would just look like hell. And he got some results with clients, but none of his clients looked as physically good as he did, like as shredded as he did. All of my clients looked like they could go, like by the time they were ready to fight, they felt good look good in the face, but their bodies look like they could be on a bodybuilding stage.
Yeah.
Right. Any of those other fighters that look shredded and water depleted, you can see it. They're gaunt in their face. And as you experience, my fighters don't do that. So again, but they're very successful fighters, fight coaches. You don't have, the more you keep putting your body through those physically demanding hard things, you're not focused on the hormonal effects of what you're doing in the program.
Yeah.
The shorter you're making their lifespan of their sport, and the more percentage wise you're increasing the percentage chance of them having an injury. So that's why the calorie and the water deprivations are bad. And then you look at some factors that some science will lead us leads to indicate that the brain takes about 30, upon dehydration, the brain will take 36 hours to rehydrate. So even at the pro level, you're fighting in 24 hours from weigh-in.
Yeah.
Which means if you're doing a water dehydration diet and you get that, you see the fighters walking up and they're out of it, that's their brain dehydrated. They're not fully hydrated. And the one organ that better be working when you fight is your brain.
Yeah.
It's the motor control. Yeah. What are you doing? So
for me, obviously during a weight cut, you're not going to feel like, the tippity top. If you're cutting a little bit of food and you're cutting a little bit of water, you're definitely a little drained. But that's what I noticed weight cutting with you was, the first time and then this time also is like, I didn't even feel that bad. And then I drink a little bit of water. I drink a little bit of electrolytes. I have a little bit of pineapple, a little bit of mango, and I feel fucking amazing. And it's just crazy to me because it's not like I noticed that much of a difference during the cut or before I ate the food. Like I still felt fine. I still felt like I would be able to fight. You know what I mean? And then you add that stuff in and it feels like a whole new you. And it's just crazy to think about how
that's your food.
Yeah.
I mean, it's simply put it this way. People don't get it that everyone wants to just like throw the law of thermodynamics and calories and energy, and it doesn't matter. It's just you got to create the energy. That's not even true if you're a car. Like, why do we have different types of oil? Why do we have different types of gas? Right? Like when you buy a really expensive car that's a performance car, are you supposed to put regular gas in it?
No.
Why?
Because
it breaks down the engine. Does it break down right away? If you take your Lamborghini or your $200,000 Beam or whatever your car you want to pick, and you put regular gas in it, will it break down on that gas tank?
No.
So the purpose of putting good fuel in the car that's expensive is because of the breakdown over time of putting a poor fuel source in there. That's why it drives me nuts when guys like John Donahue are like, it doesn't affect their performance. It's like you're not looking under in the right fucking lens. You're right. Like, and you're actually dealing with some high level jiu-jitsu guys. So it's like, that's a false positive. Like that doesn't mean that just because you didn't see it, then it doesn't exist. You haven't looked into the right lens. The same as of the human body. You have an internal engine of the human body, from the oxygen to what creates in your gut, what creates not only break down the food to create fuel, but also creates all your neurotransmitters and your hormones that have to travel to the brain. Everything is traveling in the body, the blood, the lymph. So if you put poor fuel sources in it over time and you train the shit out of your body, out training the recovery so that you can hit a performance goal, you get a breakdown over time. And that's where I try to tell people the diet comes into consideration. That what I do is I reverse engineer the conceptualization of a training protocol called progressive overload. So in training, in bodybuilding, in powerlifting, they have a thing called progressive overload where no matter what, every time you train, you put a little bit more on the bar.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more. So like even certain coaches like Charles Poliquin, who is big on this with his bodybuilders, would have these little magnets that would only be 1 or half a pound that he could put on dumbbells, because progressive overload, even if it's 1 pound, you got to put something on it. And that's hard to do dumbbells, right? So that's how, so what I did is I reverse engineered it to a progressive deloading of a weight cut. So what I tell fighters is our weight cut starts 2 weeks out from the fight. In 2 weeks, we start to cut down so 2 to 3 weeks is when our weight cut begins, because we know 4 weeks out from the fight, not much in the body is going to adapt. We're not going to get a major change in speed. We're not going to get a major change in strength. We're not going to get a major change in endurance within 2 weeks of the fight. The body's not going to adapt to any type of stimuli over those 2 weeks. What we do is increase the risk of an injury. So we want to pull everything down. And since we're pulling down the workload, we pull down the fuel source. And we just, and since instead of doing a 3-day water cut, we do a 2-week water cut. Well, that's why I strip out the carbs. Number one, I strip out the carbs because they have the most amount of water content. So we start taking out the carbs slowly. We start taking out the water your body's naturally holding on to.
Yeah.
That's why the weight cuts aren't as, none of my fighters are ever like in the fucking blanket with all the shit trying to get the weight out. At worst, we're doing sauna work the night before, maybe a little bit the morning of, and we're sweating out like 4 or 5 pounds. So then the second thing we're doing is we're focusing on that reason you feel so good going into the fight is that we've created an insulin sensitivity by focusing on deciding on not only stripping out carbs, but we strip out carbs that are all the insulin sensitive ones. And then we strip out all the carbs. So the body within that, everyone's a little bit different. 7 to 10 days is a window where we have to monitor each fighter to say, okay, at that point on the 7th, the 8th, the 9th day is when you're at your breaking point. We need to start overloading the body with carbohydrates, wisely chosen carbohydrates, of course, natural fruits, vegetables. And then that's where you're like, oh my God, I feel so good because the body's just absorbing all the insulin, is absorbing all of it into the cell, or the cell absorbing all of the insulin into it with the sugar and flooding the muscle, and it's flooding the body. So when that happens, now you're feeling fucking, because most people come out of their diet and they're like, yeah, I feel great when I have my pasta and my bread. It's like, no, you're just getting a dopamine and a sugar and a blood spike reaction. That's not the same as how my fighters feel, like what you said. Like everybody says that when they first eat that meal and that second meal, it's like, I can go through a fucking wall right now.
Yeah, no,
right?
Excellent.
You feel supercharged versus most guys when they come out of their weight cut and they start eating again, they're still eating like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's not, they don't feel good because they feel great. They feel good because they've alleviated the pain.
Yeah.
You guys actually feel like fucking Superman. You feel a higher level than normal. That's because we've stripped you down slowly. We've used a progressive deloading of carbohydrates and sugar in the body. And then we find out where you're beautiful. That's why I even tell fighters, like, I like to have 90 days for fight camp. And I like to go through 3 fight camps before we hone in on what your optimal diet is.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so I apologize. That was my soapbox. I wanted to get more of the dieting stuff, but I'm going to wrap it up because we're coming up on about 1:45 before I run out of some type. So I appreciate the time I had with you. We didn't even get into the current events of MMA stuff. We'll have to definitely, get back. If people want to find you, where can they find you? Give us your Instagram.
Find me on Instagram at Sam O Eldridge, just Sam O, and then my last name Eldridge. Same on Facebook, just Sam Eldridge.
Okay. And now, when's the next? When are you looking to fight again?
I mean,
where can people get the fight at if they want to look at your fight? Where all of your fights are accessible, right?
Well, no, not all of them. This one should be available on YouTube here soon. It is for sale on Triller TV. So if you go to Triller TV and you look up Shamrock FC, their latest event is the one I was on. But if you go follow my Instagram, I'm posting tons of clips constantly. I'm going to be posting more here soon. So I would love and appreciate the follow. And who knows, I might follow you back. So
nice. All right, man. I appreciate your time here. I'm going to let you out of what's called the studio, but don't hang up your connection. It just takes a couple extra seconds to record out. Because I forgot to say at the beginning. Otherwise, hang out for 1 second, my friend. Otherwise, I'm going to bring back up our screen. For everyone, again, it's Sam O Eldridge for his Instagram and his YouTube. Just go there, follow him, and he'll let you know of the links. You guys know our Instagram as well. We're always sharing Sam stuff, and when the fights get up on YouTube, we'll share it as well. But yeah, we'll have to come back and talk more about the dieting and training. But otherwise, man, it was great to catch up. Congratulations on the fight. I know that was a big one for you to go home.
Yeah, thank you.
Otherwise, dude, I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Hang out for 1 second.